Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says Washington is seeing more Russian forces moving into the Ukraine border region, despite Moscow's announcement of withdrawals. The mayor of London has urged people to stay at home as Storm Eunice hits the capital and gets a red weather warning, and we'll get an update from our EBC UK bureau. And Japan will start to relax border curbs to allow students and business people into the country from March. Dennis Liu from our Japan bureau will give us an update. And a fire broke out on an Italian-flagged cruise ship sailing through the Ionian Sea, injuring one crew member among the nearly 300 people on board. First in our news, President Vladimir Putin will on Saturday oversee military drills involving Russian strategic forces, which will include ballistic and cruise missile launches, according to the Defense Ministry. Take a look. The Air Force units of the Southern Military District, as well as the Northern and Black Sea fleets, would be involved, it said. The Kremlin told reporters that the launch of ballistic missiles was a fairly regular training process. Tensions between the West and Russia over Ukraine and European security have been made worse by large-scale military exercises near Kiev's border and also in Belarus, even though Russia has announced that some of its troops have been pulled back and returned to permanent bases. The West says it has seen no meaningful withdrawal. Let's listen in.
How high is the threat of a Russian invasion right now?
It's very high.
Why?
It's very high because they have not moved any of their troops out. They've moved more troops in.
Russia says it's drawing down those forces. We do not see that happening on the ground. Our information indicates clearly that these forces, including ground troops, aircraft, ships, are preparing to launch an attack against Ukraine in the coming days. First, Russia plans to manufacture a pretext for its attack. This could be a violent event that Russia will blame on Ukraine, or an outrageous accusation that Russia will level against the Ukrainian government. Second, in response to this manufactured provocation, the highest levels of the Russian government may theatrically convene emergency meetings to address the so-called crisis. Next, the attack is planned to begin. Russian missiles and bombs will drop across Ukraine. Communications will be jammed. Cyber attacks will shut down key Ukrainian institutions. After that, Russian tanks and soldiers will advance on key targets that have already been identified and mapped out in detailed plans. We believe these targets include Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, a city of 2.8 million people. And conventional attacks are not all that Russia plans to inflict upon the people of Ukraine. We have information that indicates Russia will target specific groups of Ukrainians.
I must say that we are very disappointed by the ostrich-like position of our Western colleagues who are trying not to see obvious things. We are surprised that they're putting into the shadow the Minsk complex of measures, but they are placing the emphasis on the Normand format. I'd like to recall the Normand format, according to Annex 2 of the resolution, is a mechanism to control implementation, but not a place where new decisions could be discussed. For 7 years, Russia has been calling in all platforms for the Western sponsors to exert pressure on Kiev to implement the Minsk agreement. I would like to finally say that you will be able to resist the temptation to play to the cameras and will not make this meeting of ours into a circus. Will not present here baseless accusations saying that Russia allegedly was going to attack Ukraine. I think we've had enough speculation on that, including the Security Council meeting on the 31st of January convened by the United States. We have long ago clarified everything and explained everything, and the announced date of the so-called invasion is behind us, so therefore my advice to you is not present yourself in an awkward situation. I thank you for your attention.
can see some of the damage. That's clearly.
Now, Ukraine and the rebels in the east of the country who have Moscow's backing have been trading accusations over an uptick in shelling between separatists and government-controlled territory. On Thursday, a shell punched a hole in the wall of a kindergarten in government-controlled territory near the front line in the Ukrainian village of Stanitsia, Luganska. The 20 children and 18 adults inside escaped serious injury, but the attack sparked international howls of protest.
В этот момент дети находились на завтраке, но в 9 часов планировались, как обычно, по расписанию занятия непосредственно в этой комнате. К счастью, дети не пострадали, пострадали лишь сотрудники, которые получили контузию.
The conflict in Ukraine's east has rumbled on for 8 years, claiming the lives of more than 14,000 people and forcing more than 1.5 million from their homes. But now, after Russia surrounded its neighbor with armored battle groups, missile batteries, and warships, there are fears that Ukraine will be drawn into a clash that Russia could use as a pretext for invasion. The Russian Defense Ministry, meanwhile, published these images of the Black Sea Fleet Moskva missile cruiser firing during military drills in the Black Sea. The maneuvers come at a time of heightened military tension as the West fears of an invasion of Ukraine, and Russia has demanded that the U.S. withdraw all forces from NATO members in Central and Eastern Europe and is turning up the pressure on Ukraine. Russia's aggressive stance has sent diplomatic shockwaves through the West, scrambling to counter an unpredictable foe during what has been described as the worst threat to European security since the Cold War. And this just in, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said Washington is seeing more Russian forces moving into the Ukraine border region, despite Moscow's announcements of withdrawal. Take a look.
Although Russia has announced that it is moving its forces back to garrison, we have yet to see that. In fact, we see more forces moving into that region, that border region. And we also see them going through, continuing to prepare by doing things that you would expect elements to do, military elements to do, as they were preparing to launch an attack.
Now, Austin spoke after Russia announced Friday that it was withdrawing more tanks and other armored vehicles from areas near Ukraine's border after running war games that raised concerns in the West. Later Friday, U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to hold talks with Western allies to discuss Ukraine as fears swirl Russia could be seeking to create a pretext to invade. The Defense Secretary also confirmed that the U.S. planned to sell 250 Abrams tanks to Poland, although added that the exact timing of delivery was still in the works. The U.S. is in the process of temporarily deploying around 4,700 additional soldiers to EU and NATO member Poland in response to Russia's troop buildup around Ukraine. And this reinforcement will bring the U.S. military presence in Poland to around 10,000 troops on rotation. In other news, ahead of more heavy rain, residents of several neighborhoods in the devastated Brazilian city of Petrópolis were called to evacuate. Just 2 days after flash floods and landslides killed more than 120 people. Take a look.
Hoje eu estou tirando corpos, tirei o corpo da minha mãe. Ontem eu socorri meu filho, socorri vizinhos, levando para o pronto-socorro. Meu filho está bem, está no Santa Teresa internado, mas está bem. Consegui tirar com vida, apesar da lama. E minha mãe, infelizmente, nós vamos ter que enterrar ela, porque não teve jeito. Mas, teu filho morreu, tua mãe morreu, não adianta tu subir, não queriam deixar eu subir. Saí do serviço 5 horas, ontem eu saí 7 que eu fiquei preso. Fui pegar meu filho lá dentro na lama, 9 horas da noite. E 10 horas eu estava entregando.
Bem material a gente reconstrói, agora vidas não tem, você já era.
Now, earlier, sirens warned neighborhoods in the hillside tourist town to leave, with residents still shocked from the rivers of mud that buried homes and swept away cars and trees. At least 2 streets were already closed after landslides containing rocky blocks. The new rainfall comes with dozens still reported missing in the city, located some 60 kilometers north of Rio de Janeiro, and as the first funerals of identified victims also took place. Jaw-dropping footage shows houses buried in the mud. The rains were the latest in a series of deadly storms, which experts say are made worse by climate change to hit Brazil in the past 3 months. Governor Claudio Castro of Rio de Janeiro state said the streets of Metropolis resembled a scene from a war, adding these were the heaviest rains to hit the region since 1932. City Hall declared a state of disaster and 3 days of mourning. Petropolis, the 19th century summer capital of the Brazilian Empire, is a popular destination for tourists fleeing the heat of Rio. It's also known for its leafy streets, stately homes, imperial palace, today a museum, and the natural beauty of surrounding mountains. And now to the United Kingdom. The mayor of London has urged people to stay at home as Storm Eunice hits the capital. The Met Office has also said the wind gust of 122 miles per hour at the Needles of the Isle of Wight is provisionally the highest gust ever recorded in England. We have more update coming in from our UK bureau. Hello, Arian Celestino joining us live. Hello, Arian.
Hi, Alma, and yes, Britain's Meteorological Service issued its ever first danger to life weather warning for London, and the army was placed on standby as Storm Eunice made landfall on Friday. Hundreds of homes were reported to have been left without power in Cornwall, southwest England, which Eunice hit overnight, bringing gusts of 90 miles per hour. This storm, which BBC Weather said could be one of the country's worst in 3 decades, is barreling eastwards towards London. It has caused the Met Office to issue its first red weather warning for the capital, active between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. since the system was introduced in 2011. The Met Office warned of significant disruption and dangerous conditions due to extremely strong winds, adding that roofs could be blown off, trees uprooted, and power lines brought down. Roads, bridges, and rail lines have already been hit, causing delays and cancellations to bus, train, and ferry services. Another red warning was already in place for parts of Cornwall and South Wales. Home Office Minister Damian Hinds told Times Radio to take precautions and stay safe, adding that it is unusual to have a red weather warning, and it is also more unusual to have 2. The arriving storm forced Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, to postpone a trip to South Wales on Friday in the interest of public safety, his office said. Ireland's Meteorological Office also issued an alert for Storm Eunice, warning of severe and damaging winds and the possibility of coastal flooding. Another storm, Dudley, caused transport disruption and power outages when it hit Britain on Wednesday, although damage was not widespread. The UK government on Thursday held a meeting of its emergency COBR committee to discuss the response to the 2 storms. Prime Minister Boris Johnson expressed sympathy for thousands of residents left without power in northern England by Dudley. Asked about further support ahead of the arrival of Eunice, he told reporters the army is on standby. Schools in the path of the storm announced on Thursday they would shut for the day, and residents were urged to remain indoors. Heavy snow was also forecast in Scotland and northern England. That's all from me. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Arian, and you stay safe, and looking forward to more updates regarding this storm. Stay safe, Arian.
Reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Arian Celestino. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, a fire broke out today on an Italian-flagged cruise ship sailing through the Ionian Sea, injuring one crew member among the nearly 300 people on board, according to the Greek Coast Guard. The fire on the Euro ferry Olympia, which was heading to Italy from the Greek port city of Igoumenitsa, broke out at 4:30 a.m. local time. It was carrying 239 passengers and 51 crew on board, as well as vehicles. The injured crew member was 42 years old, a Coast Guard official said. He was transported to Corfu on a Coast Guard patrol boat and was hospitalized with breathing difficulties, according to local media reports. The cause of the fire, which erupted off the Greek island of Erikusa, is still unknown. And there are fears there could be unknown passengers on the ship, such as migrant stowaways who frequently sneak onto ferries between Greece and Italy. In other news, 13 women and girls died after accidentally falling down a well during a marriage celebrations in northern India, according to police. The victims were sitting on an iron slab covering the well on Wednesday when it gave way, according to senior police officer Akhil Kumar, telling reporters in Kushinagar, Uttar Pradesh state. District Magistrate S. Ralajingam said the well was old and could not take the weight of those sitting on the covering. Indian weddings are often grand affairs with huge numbers of guests and lavish ceremonies that run for several days. In 2017, 24 wedding revelers were killed in the northwestern state of Rajasthan when a wall crashed down on them during a storm. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the accident was heart-wrenching. In other news, Canadian police began arresting leaders of the trucker-led protest that has choked the capital streets for 3 weeks and provoked the government into calling a rarely used emergency powers. Earlier, police massed in the capital, readying to clear a trucker-led protest that has choked Ottawa streets for 3 weeks and provoked the rarely used emergency powers. Let's listen in.
To those engaged in the unlawful protest, if you want to leave under your own terms, now is the time to do it. Overnight and into today, we've begun to harden the perimeter around the protests. We're installing fencing and other barriers throughout the area. The secured area includes almost 100 checkpoints that will have police presence to ensure that those seeking entry to that secure area for unlawful reasons, such as joining a protest, cannot enter the downtown core.
Now, with barricades going up and heavy police presence forming in the area where hundreds of big rigs remain parked, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Parliament nearby defending his decision to invoke the Emergencies Act for only the second time ever in peacetime.
The goal of all measures, including financial measures in the Emergencies Act, is to deal with the current threat only and to get the situation fully under control. The blockades and occupations are illegal. They're a threat to our economy and relationship with trading partners. They're a threat to supply chains and the availability of essential goods like food and medicine. And they're a threat to public safety. We're not using the Emergencies Act to call in the military. We're not preventing people from exercising their right to protest legally. We are, in fact, reinforcing the principles, values, and institutions that keep all Canadians free.
The Emergencies Act, formerly known as the War Measures Act, was previously used by Trudeau's father, former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, during the October crisis of 1970. It saw troops sent to Quebec to restore order after the kidnappings by militant separatists of a British trade attaché and a Quebec minister, Pierre Laporte, who was found strangled to death in the trunk of a car. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the military would not be deployed at this time. Canadian police began arresting leaders of the trucker-led protest. A video posted to the Twitter account for the so-called Freedom Convoy showed Tamara Lich, one of the organizers, being taken into police custody on Thursday night. The earlier arrest of another leader, Chris Barber, was also captured in a video shared on the same account. 6 African countries have been chosen to establish their own mRNA vaccine production, according to the World Health Organization today, with the continent largely shut out of access to COVID jabs. Take a look.
One of the most obvious lessons of the pandemic, therefore, is the urgent need to increase local production of vaccines, especially in low and middle-income countries. That's why, in April last year, WHO issued a call for expressions of interest for establishing a technology transfer hub for mRNA vaccines. The aim of the hub is to provide a facility where manufacturers from low and lower middle-income countries can receive training in how to produce certain vaccines and the licenses to do so. Today, I'm delighted to announce the first 6 African countries that will receive technology from the hub to produce their own mRNA vaccines: Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. WHO will work with the companies and the government in each country to develop a roadmap for training and production based on their needs and capacities.
We have to scale it up to
Now, Dr. Tedros has continually called for equitable access to vaccines in order to beat the pandemic, and rails against the way wealthy nations have hogged doses, leaving Africa lagging behind other continents in the global vaccination effort. The WHO set up a global mRNA technology transfer hub in South Africa last year to support manufacturers in low and middle-income countries to produce their own vaccines. As used in the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna COVID vaccines, mRNA technology provokes an immune response by delivering genetic molecules containing the code for key parts of a pathogen into human cells. Now, Japan will start to relax border curbs to allow students and business people into the country from March. Here's Dennis Liu from our Japan Bureau giving us an update.
Good evening, Alma. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced that Japan will ease its strict virus border rules to allow students and business people into the country from March. But tourists will still be barred.
3月1日からは検査、行動把握、そして感染拡大リスクの高い場合の待機期間の設定といった基本的な条件を守ることにより、引き続き G7 で最も厳しい水準は維持しつつ、水際対策の骨格を段階的に緩和していきます。外国人の新規入国については、受け入れ責任者の管理のもと、観光目的以外の新規入国者に限って認めることといたします。
Japan has barred tourists since the early days of the pandemic and has in some cases prevented even existing foreign residents from entering the country. The move comes with growing pressure on Japan from the business community and academics to loosen the border restrictions. The curbs are the toughest in the G7 but have broad support from Japanese voters. Last November, the government slightly loosened the rules to allow some students and business people to enter, but then quickly reversed the plan weeks later as the Omicron strain emerged. Experts say after an Omicron-driven spike in infections, cases in Japan now appear to have peaked. More than 400,000 people whose visas have already been approved by authorities were waiting to enter Japan as of January 4th. More than 150,000 of those are students, with another 129,000 workers hired to take part in a technical training program that is a key source of foreign labor for several industries in the country. While Japan has not pursued a zero COVID policy and has avoided strict lockdowns, it has made tough border measures a centerpiece of its pandemic response. Even citizens and returning residents able to enter have been subject to quarantines of up to 2 weeks, with testing before and after entering the country. Kishida said quarantine requirements would now be eased, going from 7 to 3 days if arrivals test negative. Quarantine will be removed altogether for those with 3 vaccine doses coming from countries judged low risk, he added, without specifying particular nations. But asked about tourism, Kishida said the issue was still being discussed, with no time frame in place for a full reopening. Japan has recorded more than 20,950 deaths. In the pandemic, polls show Japanese broadly favor the tough restrictions, with nearly 60% of respondents in a recent survey by public broadcaster NHK backing a continued ban on entry. This is the latest for now. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Dennis. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met with Bahrain's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa during a historic visit to the small, oil-rich Gulf country, 17 months after they ended decades of tensions to normalize ties. To give us an update, here is Catherine Coronel from our Manama, Bahrain Bureau.
A historic trip which would have been unthinkable a few years ago, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett became the first Israeli leader to make an official visit to Bahrain after touching down on the Gulf state on Monday. Before taking off, he highlighted the importance of closer relations between the two countries.
Consider it a historical day to receive the Prime Minister of Israel his visit to Bahrain will be a fruitful visit, a successful visit, because of his determination and leadership towards a joint integrated effort for the best of the two peoples. I thank him for coming.
And I think we discussed many ways to build new bridges and an architecture for a stronger and more stable region.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to continuing this remarkable relationship.
Inshallah. By the will of God.
By the will of God. In Hebrew, it's Bezrat Hashem. In Arabic, it's Inshallah.
Bennett's Bahrain trip follows a visit by Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz earlier this month that saw the two countries sign a defense agreement. The deal covered intelligence, procurement, and joint training. As part of the agreements, Israel is set to post a naval official in Bahrain. Earlier, he met with King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and Crown Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, who is also Prime Minister of the island nation. It was the latest diplomatic breakthrough since several Arab states under the U.S.-brokered 2020 Abraham Accords entered the isolation of Israel despite the ongoing Israel-Palestinian conflict. The strengthening of ties, which highlights a shift in geopolitical priorities from some Arab states, increasingly worried about the Iran's nuclear program, a concern also shared by Israel. Reporting from Manama, Bahrain, this is Catherine Cornell, Eagle News International.
In other news, a 5-year-old boy trapped for 3 days down a well in a remote Afghan village has died, according to several Taliban officials today. The child, named Haidar, slipped Tuesday to the bottom of a well being dug in Shokak, a parched village in Zabul province, around 400 kilometers southwest of the capital, Kabul. Rescuers worked non-stop to try to reach the boy, who officials said was still alive Friday morning, before later announcing he had died. The operation comes around 2 weeks after a similar attempt to rescue a boy from a Moroccan well gripped the world, but ended with a child found dead. In other news, the U.S. Coast Guard offloads roughly 54,500 pounds of cocaine and 15,800 pounds of marijuana seized by the Cutter James, collectively worth approximately $1.06 billion at Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was one of the biggest in recent memory, a reflection of increasingly sophisticated U.S. arsenal that includes powerful drones and special infrared cameras that can detect heat from small cocaine-laden vessels. But it also highlights a recent surge in narcotics coming from Colombia, a close U.S. ally and the world's top producer of cocaine. In other news, the U.S. Senate passed a stopgap funding bill after threats by some Republicans earlier in the week risked a damaging government shutdown. The bill, which passed by 65 votes to 27, will extend federal spending at current levels until March 11. Had the bill not passed by Friday at midnight, the federal government would have entered a costly shutdown with hundreds of thousands of government employees furloughed and all non-essential offices closed. The House of Representatives passed the bill, the third such stopgap spending text in less than 5 months, on February 8. It now goes to President Joe Biden to sign it into law. 19 Republican senators joined Democrats in voting for the bill, putting it above the threshold of a filibuster. Despite some threats from Republicans to hold up the process, a shutdown was highly unlikely. Most elected officials on both sides of the aisle signaled they did not want a shutdown, which would create havoc by sending millions of public workers home without pay. The stopgap funding gives lawmakers some more time to reach a long-term spending package to cover the rest of the fiscal year through September 30. In other news, Chinese e-commerce sites AliExpress and WeChat were added to the U.S. government's list of notorious markets amid complaints they trade in counterfeit goods, a practice that causes significant harm to American firms. The global trade in counterfeit and pirated goods undermines critical U.S. innovation and creativity and harms American workers, according to USTR Catherine Tai in a statement. The report noted that counterfeit and pirated goods from China, together with transshipped goods from China to Hong Kong, accounted for 83% of the value and 79% of the volume of counterfeit and pirated goods seized by authorities in 2020. AliExpress, owned by dominant e-commerce force Alibaba, where sellers provide wholesale offerings and order fulfillment services for drop shipping retailers. While USTR said the platform shares some tools with Alibaba, which has some of the best anti-counterfeiting processes in the online sales world, there has been a significant increase in fake goods sold on AliExpress, as well as the number of sellers. Meanwhile, USTR also said WeChat is viewed as one of the largest platforms for counterfeit goods in China, and cited weaknesses in WeChat seller vetting and mild punishments against offenders. WeChat, with over 1.2 billion active users around the world in 2021, is part of the Chinese tech giant Tencent and offers a massively popular super app, which includes social networking, messaging, e-commerce services, and more. Indonesian President Joko Widodo warned of risks to the global economy caused by the crisis in Ukraine as he makes opening remarks at the first G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Jakarta. Take a look.
Dalam situasi seperti ini, tidak ada satu negara pun yang bisa bangkit sendirian. Semua negara saling terkoneksi. Tidak ada yang terisolasi. Kebangkitan satu kawasan akan membangkitkan kawasan yang lainnya. Sebaliknya, keruntuhan satu kawasan akan ikut meruntuhkan kawasan yang lainnya. Dalam situasi yang seperti ini, bukan saatnya untuk rivalitas. Bukan saatnya untuk membuat ketegangan baru yang mengganggu pemulihan dunia, apalagi yang membahayakan keselamatan dunia, sebagaimana yang terjadi di Ukraina saat ini. Saat ini semua pihak harus menghentikan rivalitas dan ketegangan. Kita harus fokus untuk bersinergi, untuk berkolaborasi.
The threat of a Russian invasion of its ex-Soviet neighbor presents a fresh challenge for a world already struggling to keep a recovery from the coronavirus pandemic on track as inflation surges. Rocketing global inflation will also be in focus at the meeting as central banks begin tightening rates and withdrawing massive stimulus introduced during the pandemic. Other issues on the agenda at the talks, which were originally due to take place in Bali but were moved due to an Omicron virus wave, include best restructuring for poor countries and reform of global health systems. Staying in Indonesia, the country pushed forward the agenda to bolster global recovery post-pandemic as it hosted a G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Jakarta. Again, let's listen in.
The emergence of the new variant Omicron has also contributed to heighten uncertainty in the global economy. And like previous variant of COVID-19 that is affecting countries at different times, the divergence of capacity to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, including the vaccine rollout across countries, are major factors that are leading to the uneven recovery. The pandemic also provides us with a harsh reminder of the vulnerability of our global economy of non-traditional shock. Climate change could pose even bigger threat than the pandemic. The G20 must play a role in combating climate change.
In this background, the agenda on exit strategy will discuss on how the G20 can safeguard global recovery momentum from the negative spillover stemming from a synchronized exit policy and different pace of policy normalization.
Disruption, as well as technologies that facilitate climate action. In 2022, as we are all witnessing.
In NBA action, Joel Embiid scored 42 points to win his personal duel with Giannis Antetokounmpo as the Philadelphia 76ers scored a 23-120, 123-120 victory over the Milwaukee Bucks on Thursday. After a humiliating 137-87 loss to Boston on Tuesday, the Sixers roared back to life with a gutsy win over the reigning NBA champions in Milwaukee. Embiid enhanced his MVP credentials with another dominant performance for Philadelphia in the final game before the All-Star break. Antetokounmpo led the Bucks scoring with 32 points, while Drew Holiday had 24, and Chris Middleton 19. But the victory went to Embiid and the Sixers in a game that saw the lead change hands 15 times. Meanwhile, golf superstar Tiger Woods remains confident he'll return to top-flight competition, but says he has a long way to go as the timetable remains a mystery 1 year after a car crash left him with devastating leg injuries. Take a look.
You know, Dee, I wish I could tell you when I'm playing again. I want to know, but I don't. My golf activity has been very limited. I can chip and putt really well and hit short irons very well, but I haven't done any long stuff seriously. So I can walk on a treadmill all day. It's easy. It's just straight. There's no bumps in the road. But walking on the golf course with those undulations, I have a long way to go. I just got to continue working. I'm getting better, yes, but as I said, not at the speed and rate that I would like, and yet in the age factor too, and you just don't quite heal as fast, and which is frustrating.
Supporting diversity in the game, initiatives important to you?
Well, Charlie was a person. He was well. First of all, don't do what I did.
Woods' comments will damp down expectations he could make a miraculous return for the Masters. At Augusta National in April, Woods said he had seen progress since December, particularly in his short game. However, he remains limited in how much work he can put in on the driving range. Despite his frustration at how long his latest injury recovery is taking, Woods said he considered himself lucky to be where he is after fears he would lose his right leg after suffering 2 compound fractures. And NASCAR made sports history, holding its season opening exhibition race for the first time in the iconic Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Our EBC Los Angeles team with the story.
Welcome to the Clash at the Coliseum. Woo!
Here we are at the Clash at the LA Coliseum. Let's go NASCAR!
For the first time in NASCAR history, the preseason clash takes place at the iconic Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum.
And for those going to a NASCAR race in person for the first time, one of the things they'll discover is that the engines are so loud, no matter how you sing at the top of your lungs, no one will be able to hear you. Observe. A quarter-mile lap, or short track, was built in the Coliseum, which makes for a dynamically frenzied, tight-turning race.
And out of a field of 23 racers, it was Joey Logano driving the number 22 Team Penske Ford, who, after taking the checkered flag, treated NASCAR fans to a celebratory burnout. Before marching up the steps from Victory Lane to solidify his moment in history.
Preceding the race, we spoke with ticket holders at NASCAR's fan event who were more than happy to express their passion for the sport.
We're huge NASCAR fans. We were born and raised watching NASCAR. Our dad loves NASCAR. We actually bought him tickets to this race for his birthday.
And this is actually our first NASCAR race.
Yeah, that we're attending.
I've been a NASCAR fan most of my life. I watch more F1, but NASCAR's never been to LA, so this is a big deal.
This is my first time, so I don't really know what to expect, but I'm really excited. It sounds really cool and everything looks amazing set up.
I've been a fan for maybe the last 5 years, it was introduced to me. So I'm a Kyle Busch fan, go Kyle, just that's what I'm most excited to see.
I got into NASCAR a while back. I stopped watching it because, I hadn't had the stuff to watch it live. So this time I'm going to a live event, so I'm very stoked to see that.
I expect to see some cool things. I mean, tight turns, pretty short track, quarter mile. It's pretty awesome. It's gonna be sick. I mean, it's really fast cars just turning left. So I mean, what can't you like about that?
To be honest, I've never seen a live short track race. I've only seen the large one in Fontana. The smaller tracks should be more interesting, a lot tighter races, a lot more bumping and rubbing and getting things a little more intense.
One topic, almost as important as the race itself, was a discussion about making LA City proper a permanent venue for NASCAR.
I think it's a really cool experience with having it so close and having so much history here. It's just really awesome to see it here.
It's fun. It's fun. He was actually talking about coming to LA and he didn't realize we were in LA today. So once he got here and realized what it was awesome. And it's not far from home. It's only 30 minutes. It was great, easy drive. So if this happens more often, hopefully it will, and we'll be back for the next one.
Please, continue. There's fans here. There are fans here in California, and we want to see more.
I would love if they brought it back here more often because it's an easy drive from Phoenix, so we could come back here anytime it's in LA again.
I think there's as many car people out here as there are on that side of the U.S., so NASCAR, keep doing this. Look around, there's a lot of people.
We go straight to the source to pose the question, could sizable attendance and fan satisfaction ensure future NASCAR races in LA? Alan Basoyahe, Eagle Broadcasting. The pandemic restrictions in Los Angeles is a little more elevated than in other cities. How did that factor in logistically? And the turnout, though, we're going to assume you're still pretty satisfied with.
I would say logistically, we were pretty well schooled in different states, different counties, where you had to go due to COVID, from no fans to partial fans. So, part of this was making sure we were in lockstep with what the rules were going to be. I think our team, Tom Bryan and the whole crew, did a tremendous job working hand in hand with all the local authorities to make sure that we were there. And back to your crowd question, the crowd met every expectation we had going in. So when you look at the naysayers prior to, when you look at where we were with the Clash in Daytona, it's a home run. And I think the enthusiasm, the demographic, a lot of young people out there having fun is exactly what we want.
While the Clash at the Coliseum doesn't count towards standings for the season, drivers battle fiercely because, let's face it, who wants to lose?
With live performances, pre-race activities, and adrenaline-fueled driving, well, no one did. Lose, that is.
Evan Allen, Eagle News, Los Angeles.
Thank you, Evan Allen. We'll take a short break and we'll be back.
Time out muna sa hugutan!
Maglaro muna tayo ngayong linggo!
Tara game! Agad-agad!
With Agamulak!
Israeli farmer Jackie Ariel is showing off a 289-gram strawberry that was found in his field last year and set a new Guinness World Record for the heaviest strawberry in the Kadima village in central Israel. Take a look.
חיכינו לתוצאות. אנחנו במשך שנה מחכים לתוצאות, ולפני שבועיים קיבלנו את התוצאות, ואנחנו מאוד שמחים להיות בספר השיאים של גינס.
Now, it's a strawberry too special to eat. At 289 grams, it has been recognized as the heaviest in the world, cold weather in 2021 slowed the ripening process and allowed the strawberry to keep gaining weight. Ariel froze his prize berry last year to wait for confirmation of a record. And as always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert and stay informed because we live in interesting times. Good night.
Sana ingatan mo lang, baka kasi mag-uho.
This is your turista vlogger! Aray! Uy! Uy! Huli ka!
Hello? Ano? Gusto mo na? O di break mo? Boss! Ay, kumabot.